Well, hello, welcome to this edition of the KUDO community meeting. I just started recording. Please be mindful during participation that we're being held to a code of conduct, and that anything you say could and will be viewable from the public web. So with that said, we have a couple of items to get to before we get to just open discussion. And the first few of them, actually, Jan, who's present, is going to lead the discussion. So we're going to talk about community repository management and probably have a demo out of that. Take it over.
Yeah, sure. So I created a CAP 32 today about an improved community repository workflow. So this is not about changing how we do repositories. This is not changing how users should install operators using KUDO. It's only about how the workflow of third-party operator developers getting their operator into our community repository should look like, which at the moment is done through the KUDO builder /operators repository. And well, it has certain drawbacks that we discovered when we were working on the KUDO Cassandra operator, pushing us towards finding a better solution there. And this is all explained in the CAP. I was working on a MVP of a small tool that takes care of that, so I could demo that. But first, are there any questions around that, around the scope or something? Not really about the CAP itself, because I think there we can discuss certain topics later. That's a no. Okay, so then I'd like to demo something, if you don't mind me sharing my screen. So how this would look like. I mean, this is now really going deep into the implementation. The workflow itself is described in the CAP 32 for users, but I mean, this is how the implementation would look like, but it also shows kind of how users would interact with that, though not in that detail, because I mean, this is like CI specific stuff, this tool I wrote. Let me just share my screen. Here we are. Now I need to get past these things. I hope everyone can see my screen. This is all large enough. So I have this small tool here called KUDO Hub. I need a better name, but this is the easiest one I can come up with. And what this does is it's taken a definition of operator references, which is the new thing I'm introducing in CAP 32, and is creating a repo and an index for that. And then in the next step, this just needs to be synced with what we are doing right now, which is Google Cloud Bucket, which then provides the URLs that I use for the community repo. So let's see, I have prepared something here, how that would look like, how this would look like. So the what is now operators could look like in the future, which is simply a folder, and there's multiple, operators index. There's multiple files in there, and one of these files could look like this. So it defines multiple versions of a Cassandra operator, and here it's no longer the full operator package inside this repository and this Git repository, not to confuse it with the community repository, but it's just a reference to an existing Git repository where the code for the operator package resides. And because this is usually the way these operators are developed, or at least we did, and I guess others would do it as well, is that you have inside of your repository, which in this case is mesosphere / KUDO Cassandra operator, you would have a separate directory where you put in the operator package. And then at some point you tag a release, and you could reference this here. And in this file already, we have 2 releases, 2 tagged releases, and we want to add this to the index now. So the workflow for a user would be to create a PR against our, say, operators, or maybe even a different name, Git repository, which adds this file. There's a we can take the diff of that with git diff and see, hey, this file has been changed or this file has been added, and then run a tool. Let me just check how that would look like. KUDO hub, update repository. I created a folder for that. Repository is test repo. I don't need a URL for now. And then I would just, so I need to move this here. And then I just need to point it to the folder, or to, I don't need the full folder, but I can just use separate files. So I'll just add this Cassandra here. Let's hope this works. Yeah, this looks good. And this would then be done by the CI. Some logs here, and in the end, we end up with this test repository that now has these tarballs for these 2 operators and an index, which now has these 2 entries. And if we then later in separate PRs add more operators here, let's do that. And let's just add everything else what is in here. We have Cassandra, Elastic, Kafka. Let's just add everything that's left. Okay, now let's look at the test repo again. And now we see we have more packages here, and also the index has been updated to include Cassandra, what else is here? Elastic and Kafka. And this way, we could have multiple packages as separate files getting updated by respective third-party operator developers. And then, well, this tool run by the CI would then take care of keeping a folder up to date, and this folder could then be synced with the Google bucket that we have right now. But this is then more an implementation detail on how to sync that. Yeah, that's my demo. Any questions around that?
Super cool. I have a couple of thoughts, but
yeah, sure.
Somewhat extensive, maybe, meaning maybe they're future looking. I'm not sure. We don't need to boil the ocean. One, it seems like a lot of repeating in the YAML, where if you have another version, it's probably just another version tag. It seems like it would be easier to be able to have multiple tags as an option, so yes. That okay, yeah. So that's one thought. Was in all likelihood, if you're going to go this route, it'd be very common just to have the same structure, especially for the same operator, over and over again with just different tags or branches or whatever. The second thought was I could see value and potentially, like this approach. One is very Git oriented, which it just is. That's not terribly negative. It just is. I could see somebody wanting to host their own operator, and I see no reason why they couldn't or shouldn't. So they create an instance of a tarball, they put it on their website, but they want to add an entry into the community.
Yeah, that's totally doable. I mean, this is kind of pluggable right now. Let's take a look at Cassandra and the way here it's referencing a Git repository, but there's nothing against like having a separate item here that says just URL or something, and then just points to the tarball directly.
That's fantastic. Yeah, great.
I mean, in general, we might want to keep in mind that having final tarballs provided, then we might want to think about security, so that not that somebody changes the tarball afterwards.
Yeah, though I think as part of a CI that kind of does some conformance checks, we could unpack the tarball and to take a look at everything we want to have there is there.
Yes,
some
yes.
validation.
When it's added, yes, but I think we have to calculate the digest ourselves, for example, and then make sure that after it's added, it doesn't get changed.
Oh yeah,
Sure.
I mean, what we will have in our bucket, yeah, we won't have a reference to that tarball in our bucket, but we will have an actual copy of the tarball in our bucket, so that
okay,
can't
yeah.
get changed.
Yeah, okay, that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, we will still host the tarballs.
Yeah, I guess adding on to that, part of the reason of hosting yourself would probably want to gather analytics, meaning. So even if we host them ourselves, I would think under that model, you would want to try to force the query against the index should be against our index, but the request for the tarball should be against the third-party URL. That way they can collect analytics and things of that nature. Just a thought. I'm not trying to take a strong position.
Yeah, that would be, I mean, one of the goals here for me was to not change anything we have right now in the way we structure our repository.
Totally.
I mean, yes.
Actually, that's not a change, really.
No,
yeah, I mean,
it's possible today to host from any URL.
You're right, because here the URL is pointing to something, could be pointing to something external. But the way this is created right now, so through the KUDO command that does that, you are only able to provide a single URL for all of these entries.
Right.
And
yeah, it would mean multiple operations for each deviation. Yeah, I get the logistics, but yeah.
So it's not impossible, of course.
Yeah.
I just didn't have that in mind for now, of course.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's also useful, let me rephrase. It's also possible to have multiple entries, multiple URL entries, and perhaps you have theirs and then ours, or perhaps we don't even need that. Like that was added in, and I'm not sure, I'm not sure the reasoning. It could have been just a copying model of previous work, but we don't really utilize it. So.
Yeah, my goal here was to have just an MVP, and then, I mean, this is a good starter that we can always improve on or change later.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
no, it's super awesome. I love that you created a whole CLI and everything. That's awesome.
That's a Go tool. What you is it correct, or what is it written in?
It was in Go. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
So we can basically just use that in our CI and.
Yeah, the CI would then use it as a Docker image or something. It's as a few commands. I made sure that, like, syncing to what's it called, like a bucket, is independent from updating something. So this is not built in. It's just an implementation detail that our community repo is on Google Cloud, could be on AWS or something else. So.
I haven't had a chance to read the KEP yet, so I apologize for that. But does it include like landing it inside, like the GitHub repository that will manage this at all, or is that like?
Yeah, that's more like up for discussion.
Okay.
I mean, there's a few points from everyone who already looked at the KEP that were mentioned there that we could discuss here if everybody wants to. But yeah, this is one of these points as well. We have this KUDO builder /operators. Should we use that here, or should we? I mean, I would say initially have a separate thing for that and keep the operators repository for now.
Yes, I'm very much in favor of creating a new repository for the index and the index files.
Yeah, I mean, there needs to be a repository for the tool I wrote, and then also for the index. What is now operators would become index. I don't know if somebody has an awesome name. I mean, boring names are great as well. Hub or index is fine. Yeah, but one of the questions that's closely related to that is we have operators already in /operators in this. And the new model is making the assumption that all third-party operators are in their own repository. These operators, well, they are in their own repository, they're all in the operators repository, and the question is more like, what should happen to this? Should we keep it there? I don't want to migrate all these smaller operators to their separate repositories, but there needs to be some migration, say, for example, for the Kafka operator, which is a big project that has its separate repo, but chose for good reasons to have their source of truth in the operators repository, and that I'm pretty sure will then change with the new model.
Yeah, I would be a fan of moving out Cassandra and Kafka because they already have a repository for their source of truth, if you will. And I would be a fan of creating the operators repo, either renaming it or moving them to KUDO operator examples or samples or whatever.
Yeah, makes sense.
The community repo that holds all the operators, how are like the Flink owners going to tag the Git repo appropriately to have a new release?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the motivation why we came up with a new model, because that's already the problem, right?
So we will not have a community at all. Everything will be owned by every operator will have its own repo that its owners will have tagging permissions for.
Yes.
Nothing will be shared anymore. Okay.
Yeah, outside of, I think it's wise to have some samples, in particular, those that show certain techniques. Cowsay is a good example where it has a very specific purpose that could be used for documentation, what have you. I think there's also like demos that maybe people want to do either through conferences or sales reps or whoever, that would probably be useful to have in a demos or a samples folder or repository. That's a good question.
Yeah, and I mean, we could still keep, for these cases, use the operators repository as source and just use the master branch. So it doesn't have to be tagged for these cases.
Yeah, I think especially for small proof of concept operators and stuff like that, the operators repo is probably fine. But as soon as it gets more complex with updates and different versions and lots of tests, then a separate repository is probably the way to go.
Yeah. But updates, do you guys mean retagging the source repo?
Yeah, I just noticed that what I just said with the master branch is not the best approach. Maybe we
main branch?
Main branch, of course, yeah, but that was my first mistake. But the other one is that, of course, if there is a new update to some operator, this won't be really get detected by the tool, then there needs to be a tag. I think for the few operators that we have in this right now, I think we can just have multiple tags or something like this is done for Go tools, for example, where you have a go please / version tag, and then you have we would have a Cowsay version 02 tag and stuff like that.
But why would we need tags? I mean, we currently have like different versions and different directories, right?
Yeah.
And we could create a Cowsay index that just points to the specific directory.
Yes, sure. But then in what version? If you say master, main, sorry. If you say main, well, it's still master on the operators. We haven't changed that yet, right? Okay. But if you say main and now there's an update to Cowsay, how do you trigger this update in our new model?
On each commit to main. Like,
I mean, you want to create a PR that says, hey, this has been updated. But if you're still pointing to master, to main, nothing
okay.
has updated. Yeah,
so
in the reference.
you mean without creating a new directory for the new version?
Yeah, without.
I mean, we're creating this new GitHub repo that will be the gateway to everything synced out to the buckets, right? So I still feel like everything that's in our samples should be managed by humans to do that. I do think there is value, if we're up to it, in creating a full automation and using one of the operators as an example of creating a automatic pull request into that. But I don't know if there's any triggers really outside of that.
Yeah, I mean, the reference wouldn't change if we would still use main, but we can still find something. I mean, I think this is like a solvable problem.
Yeah, Ian, like from what I understood, this is like a gateway for the third-party operators, right? Like, so I'm hosting another GitHub repo or another URL, and then I need to open a PR to that pointing to my URL or my GitHub.
Yes.
But if we are owning the sample, demo, or examples, I don't see why don't we have to go through that gateway? Like it's KUDO builder / operators, right?
Yeah.
And if we remove Kafka and remove Cassandra from there because it's Day2IQ hosted operators. But let's say like for Flink example, if somebody updates the main in the operators repo, it should just get published, right?
Yeah, well, we still have a reference then to that folder where the Flink demo resides in. But if main has been updated, the CI of the new tool won't detect that because it only looks at the reference. And this is still referencing the main branch. So in this file, there would be no diff, and it reacts to a diff changing. But there's ways around that. We could force something, or we could, find some tags or something. We just need to make sure that the diff of the reference to that repository changes somehow, or could manually override something, and then this would be possible. Yeah.
I know Tom's running. See, but I second what Tom says, and I think we brought it up before. I think Crew is pretty well known in the ecosystem, and I think Crew does a really good job of taking a pull request and then pushing that once it's been cleared and merges, it then releases. So I'm hoping we're following that model, but
and that's what I mean. When I demoed this internally, that was the first thing you mentioned. Hey, look at Crew, and I did, and yeah, this is the idea of following that closely.
Cool. I think that answers Tom's comment as well. Well, cool. Anything else?
Not from my side. I mean, I think we touched these things. I would like to have some consensus if this is a good approach, and if and I mean, the cap is there. Please take a look. I think that's the point where we then find the consensus, not here in this meeting. So take a look at the cap. But I'll also start with the first works on getting this ready to actually work. Maybe in the beginning, probably as a side repo that then pushes to some different Google bucket or something. And once that is ready, I can switch that to the main Google bucket we use right now at some point.
Yeah, that probably gives us a good opportunity to change the repo URL again. I think because currently we still have the /version10 somewhere in there, don't we?
Yeah, but I mean, that's implementation detail, right?
It is, yeah, but it might be a good opportunity to get that straight.
Yeah,
I know you're looking for some consensus. I loved what you were showing a lot, actually. Anything I was thinking was kind of like, well, where could we go from here? But like what you have is great. I'm looking at the KEP now, and it looks like it's under 100 lines. I'll have, for my part, I'll have it reviewed today and make sure that there's some thought, whatever thoughts I have come up. I'll add them.
Same. I have a lot of ideas for the future that could build up on this, but I think as a base, this is very, very good.
Yeah, I mean, my idea is here to have an MVP and then something that isn't too. That's clear enough to be easily extendable in the future, and then we can think about stuff like maturity levels, additional metadata, things like web UI to have a nice overview of all the of the catalog and all of this.
Let's not forget test. We need the paths to the test. Otherwise, we are not releasing it. Like, but no, I'm
this
not
is
saying it's a blocker. Yeah.
This is the good thing, and something I wanted to mention as well. Yeah, tests. Because in my opinion, third-party repos should take care of testing, not the catalog itself, and we should discuss that. I mean, in my opinion, the repository tool should make sure, of course, that what is if there is a PR, there's a CI running that verifies, hey, this is a correct operator. This is something that could install, but like running, say, for example, upgrade tests or more, or tests that are very specific to that operator shouldn't be part of that. That should be, at this point, already being done in the third party, in the upstream repository.
We probably want to have a discussion and a KEP around that, because I think we're going to have different opinions, and something we need to. I think there's some minimalistic. I don't know what that means yet. That's to be defined. Testing. I'll also add that I just added in the ability for KUDO to pull tests from a tarball off the web. So with that's specifically targeted at this kind of thing where there's a sanity test of sorts that can be predefined and referenceable from anywhere on the web. So,
in general, I agree with you, Jan. But on the other hand, it would really, really provide a lot of value if we could, on a new KUDO release, say, hey, just test installation and upgrade of all operators that we have, or at least a subset. Every
I mean, I agree with that as well. I mean, I know the issue here, and yeah, on the other hand, I mean, we should do some sanity tests, of course. Make sure that this operator would install. I mean,
I don't think we can get away like by not doing some sort of sanity test. And
yeah, we definitely need to do.
Yeah, I actually also commented this part of the KEP, and I expected Ken to jump on it and like have ideas. So yeah,
sure. But my idea would be that we can find something that is generic to all operators. I mean, we kind of do that already in the operators repo.
Exactly. So we actually have quite a model for that in the operators repo, right?
Yeah. But then we also
some KUDO YAML, and it runs it. And
yeah, but
I don't know, it possibly opens like a lot of doors that we don't want to open, but
what it actually runs is a very simple sanity test. It just installs the operator and operator version of that said operator. Most of it for all of the operators we have in the repo right now.
Yeah, but because we control the KUDO YAML, right? If we don't control it, if it lives somewhere else and we're just executing it, like who knows what's behind it, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Consider but I think we will need something like that, and KUDO already offers a model for that. So
yeah, I would even say that this conversation leads to the potential need of more metadata. Currently, it's not easily achievable and certainly not standardized to know what resources are required. If you're going to stand up a whole Cassandra in a production sense. Or is it possible to provide a minimalistic minimum values? This might not be production, but satisfies close enough. There's no way to articulate any of that or to understand it, right?
Yeah, but I mean, this is something, I think in two ways here. One is stuff that can be enforced for generically for each operator. And this is something like we could go through, hey, what is the metadata in the operator? So we could set a certain standard of things that we want to have in an operator that is deemed good enough for us to be part of the community repository, which includes stuff like maintainer lists, emails, and stuff like that. But others is tests specific to an operator. I'm not sure. But I mean, this is the discussion.
I would actually even go further with, I would want the test to happen in multiple versions of Kubernetes, and then have maybe even a...
Yeah, but I mean, my idea is to have this responsibility as part of the developers of that operator. But then, of course, have metadata where they can indicate how the maturity of how they determine the maturity of the operator, and maybe link to how they test that or something, some documentation. But to keep this decision up to the users of the operator, if they deem it mature enough for their use case, based on the information that we couldn't provide through metadata reference from the third-party operator.
It's going to take many steps, and I think this is a good first one for sure. So let's see here. I'm sharing my screen. It's mainly just the agenda. We may be close to done. The things remaining include KUDO was released, 050. There was a recent as last night bug that was interesting, because the bug really wasn't a bug per se. Well, it wasn't what they reported, but inclusive of their reporting was a seg fault, and that's just not okay. So I'll take a look at that today, and most likely even prepare for a 051, but we'll see. Nothing super critical. I mean, it's mostly functional. It's just this one edge. KUDO, as a team, we got together this morning, and there was some conversation yesterday as well about doing the RC release with the holidays in the US being tomorrow, and then a lot of people off on Monday. This means getting an RC release out this week and probably getting a full release out Tuesday or Wednesday, depending. Okay, getting some thumbs up. And that has already had KUDO 050 integrated. If it's not merged, it's got a PR out, and it's probably, no, I think it's merged. Yeah. I think I merged it.
It is merged, and it also has upgrade to Kubernetes 118.3 dependencies, I think.
118.4, yeah. But the PR says 118.3, but it's actually 118.4.
That's right. Yeah, isn't that awesome? Yeah. Okay. And then I don't know if we've ever mentioned this in our community meeting. I just don't. I lose track of time and time frame and what we've covered if it's not on the agenda. But just bringing it to a broader audience that KUDO and KUDO as part of KUDO has been accepted in the sandbox for the CNCF. So, you know, how we run like before, we were running these under the code of conduct associated with our project, and we're and the Kubernetes environment as a whole, but it was kind of in good faith. At this point, as we move forward, you know, the code of conduct will be governed by the CNCF, among other things, as well as a structure. And I think there's been some proposals out on who might be leading certain efforts, things of that nature. I also see that Jeff has joined us, and Jeff, if you haven't met Jeff yet, works on the scorecard on the Operator SDK. Hey, Jeff. And he's works for Red Hat, I believe, and has been added as one of the co-leads on KUDO, and has been a part of integrating KUDO into the testing and scoring of operators in the Operator SDK space. So if you haven't reached out and said hi to Jeff, you should.
Yeah.
Good to see you guys.
And now it's, I guess, open discussion. If people want to have anything else to bring to the table, this would be a time to do that. Sorry, I lost track of my ability to coordinate. There it is.
And,
all right.
There was one thing, like I think, like we discussed in a small group with Andreas and Jan, and I think like in the community meeting we should also comment on that. So there's like we just did the Cassandra GA of the KUDO Cassandra, and like I was participating in the data community meeting of the Cassandra operator that is led by DataStax, and they are like agreeing on a common CRD, right? So basically, like all the operators, Orange, you know, like, and Sky and DataStax, and like, you know, like if Apple is going to publish open source something, they will all be working through one common CRD of the, like a like org Apache Cassandra CRD. And if you install it, it will just install it, like make it easy, creating key spaces, how the backups will be done. So they are all agreeing on that, right? And yeah, like this has left a bit KUDO Cassandra a bit outside of that group, because we actually don't have like CRD support. And there were some discussions like how if we should explore that some way to make it possible, right? And I wanted to explore some things here, and maybe like if try to do some kind of discussion there, not today, but maybe in the next community meeting, or like in the future, or in the Slack channel, if there are some ideas we can discuss there, because I feel like this will be the approach followed by many other stateful workloads that like they will be like working towards some community standards, right? And the standards will be defined through CRDs, and that will be a limitation for future KUDO operators if they want to write out community, like where like it's community defining the CRDs.
Yeah, glad you're on top of that. That's great.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think one level is defining things at the CRD level. Kind of going meta on top of that, which sounds crazy, but I believe that's what KOI was all about. KOI was about defining interactions or standards or consensus across operators to orchestrate them. So I wonder, yeah, it'll be great feedback into that. Like we've done nothing with KOI really other than talk about it. That this will be great feedback into that loop of understanding of where we want to go with that even.
Yeah. I think with regards to CRD, there are different topics. There's one topic of like deploying the CRD itself, which is, as it's a cluster-wide stuff. I think, yeah, we talked about that, the cluster-wide topics. And I think the easier topic to tackle would be reacting to CRDs. So where we would, like with a KUDO controller, watch a CRD or a custom resource and react to changes of that to trigger a plan or update parameters in an instance and stuff like that.
I mean, the easiest thing that could be done kind of right now is to write a separate controller that acts like a bridge for input CRD to something that then creates actions against KUDO. But yeah, in the future, it could be beneficial, like through KOI or mechanisms inside KUDO to also natively support these CRDs. I have no idea how that could look like or if that's even possible, but yeah, I agree with saying that this could be something the community could move towards standardization of large-scale operators in standardized CRD definitions.
Yeah, Ian and Andreas talked other day, like just in Cassandra context, not in like more in the KUDO general context. And I was talking about the term that is like the KUDO bridge operator. Basically, that is like that is bridging between the different CRDs and our like classic model. And it should not be like so hard to prototype something, but I don't want to like do something like right away. Probably just as a pet project or something like the prototyping, and probably to present, right? So how installing a DataStax CRD, you basically install a KUDO Cassandra, right? And this should not be, I believe, should not be part of the main KUDO design. It should be something that is like a wrapper around KUDO if you want to achieve that, and just explore with the idea that if it is filling in the gap that we need right now, because this is a huge effort, and I believe it should be done like through KOI or something like that, instead of like just moving KUDO main controller, watching 1,000 CRDs. I don't want to do that. This is not something that we should not even evaluate that right at this point. But yeah, like something midterm, I think that's possible. But yeah, like I just wanted to let like talk here in the community so we can like if brainstorm it. Somebody has some ideas, just please reach me out also, like so we can discuss that. But I have some rough idea about that in my mind, and maybe like in 1 week or something, like we'll try to demo something around that, but not something.
And my
ready and all
ideas are even a bit more high level. If it even would make sense to have something like a bridge, because that would mean you have to create a new controller that isn't KUDO, which means you have to write a lot of code to have that bridge. That I mean, then I mean, the main reason for KUDO, or the main point to use KUDO is to avoid writing a controller, right? Because
no, it should be declarative. No, that's the first point. Like this
Yeah.
is the KUDO ecosystem. You know, like the precondition is like if we tried a declarative operator and without writing Go code, then no, there's no. I don't think there's like a place for that.
yeah, definitely, yeah.
So yeah, my midterm solution is not talking more like people have to write their Go code or controllers. No, that's not even in my wildest thoughts. Like I would force developers to do that. And yeah, like the good thing was like also the Jim from DataStax, he wrote the DataStax operator and he was looking forward to KUDO to use that. And he just wrote like the DataStax operator and they have just released that. And so it's a good thing to see like, you know, like I had some small talks with him like around any pain points or anything like that where we could improve. But yeah, the biggest hurdle what I see is the CRDs. Yeah. No, but just a thought. I don't want to open a discussion right now, but just wanted to have like some small mini discussion here, and that's it.
That's great. That's a good segue as well to, I should have added it to the agenda, but because we're getting ready to release KUDO, we've kind of ended a release cycle. We're starting a new one. And my understanding, I need to review it a little bit more, but my understanding of the effort that we're going to try to do in the next month is geared around customer pain points and trying to uncover more of those, like people, and helping orgs, open source, whoever, anybody who wants to write on top of KUDO, helping them to succeed with that. But on top of that, we already have a lot of good feedback from existing users, mostly internal to day 2. And so effort for providing some folder support underneath templates for operators. Probably finally actually writing that cluster-wide scope operator support, which we've talked about probably a month, but I've never actually started. And so that's what I expect for the level of effort in KUDO Core to be this month, centered around those things. I would think that the big themed effort would probably be making sure by the end of this next release, we're actually enabling third parties to release through the process that we've outlined in KEP 32. So that should be a major effort.
Will we?
Well, cool. Anything else? All right, not hearing any. My friends in Europe, it's late, and the rest of us in the US are going to be taking off the rest of the weekend. So I wish you well, and happy holidays to all the US folks. And we will see you again in 2 weeks. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.